In the past few videos, we've talked about how different recommenders can help with costs, performance, and security in your Google Cloud projects. For enterprises and larger organizations, it's likely that you'll have many projects. In order to take full advantage of the benefits from recommendations, you might need to scale how you handle them, such as incorporating them into a pipeline to programmatically manage them. Today, let's go over some tips for how an enterprise could leverage recommendations at scale, and show you how to export your recommendations to BigQuery so that they can be reviewed across your organization. The benefits of Active Assist work great even if you only have one project, but they really begin to shine in an organization with lots of projects. In each project, various recommenders will help you apply the principle of least privilege for security, minimize resource waste from workloads, and maximize the performance of business-critical applications. Because of the increased scale of operations in a large organization, you'll want to review and take action on recommendations with minimal administrative work and time. What this looks like for your organization will be unique to your workloads, infrastructure, security, and processes. While the exact details depend on what works best for you, we recommend a three-phased approach for adopting recommenders at scale. As you move through these phases at your own pace, the potential for automation increases. Let's start with the first phase, accessing recommendations through the Recommendation Hub in the Google Cloud Console. The Recommendation Hub is the simplest way of accessing and managing recommendations in your projects and organization. Reviewing recommendations in the Recommendation Hub will familiarize you with different recommenders available so that you can think about how you might like to prioritize them when building a pipeline in a later phase. Working from the console also includes being able to set up a BigQuery data transfer to export your recommendations to a BigQuery dataset. When you do this, two tables will be generated: Recommender export, where the recommendations are exported, and Insight export, where the insights that help you focus on important patterns are exported. Insights can provide additional context to recommendations, or they can be used independently. By exporting recommendations to BigQuery, you're able to look at details for project-level recommendations across your organization. With that ability, you can expand by creating dashboards to help you visualize and report the potential impact of applying recommendations. Once you're familiarized with the console and with the data exported to BigQuery, the next phase of recommenders at scale is to use the APIs. All of the recommendation data that you can access through the Recommender Hub or the BigQuery export is also available via an API. The recommendation resource returned by the API will include lots of information about a single recommendation, including the priority, the expected impact, and the status of the recommendation, such as active or dismissed. You can also use an API to return insights. Just like in the BigQuery exports, insights can provide additional context for associated recommendations. For example, a recommendation from the IAM policy recommender to reduce the permissions for a user may have an associated insight that includes the permissions that have been used in the past 90 days and therefore should not be removed. You can use the API to view recommendations and insights, as well as to update their status if you choose to take action on them. When getting started with the API, you'll probably want to require manual review, but you can start introducing automation to help scale and handle more recommendations. This can also help lay the foundation for the third phase, integrating recommendations into your organization's DevOps pipelines. If your organization has a well-established DevOps strategy, changes to your cloud infrastructure might be managed through continuous integration and continuous deployment processes. The goal for scaling recommendations should be to automate the review, analysis, and implementation. For example, you could set up Cloud Run to regularly retrieve recommendations via the API, and then automatically generate a pull request in your infrastructure as code repository for that recommended change. That pull request can be reviewed by an administrative team, and if accepted and merged, the included recommendation can move on in the pipeline and subsequently be applied to your cloud infrastructure. By incorporating recommendations into your CI/CD pipeline, you can proactively monitor recommendations. Applied changes that are kept consistent in code can easily be reviewed, tested, and rolled back using the same processes used for the rest of your infrastructure. This level of automation and integration is ideal for large organizations and enterprises, but no matter what scale you're working with, you can still always take advantage of recommendations. It can also be helpful to start slow and take the time to get familiar with recommendations and how they impact your cloud infrastructure before you implement a full-blown automation process. We've taken a look at the Recommendation Hub before, so now let's take a look at how we can get those recommendations into BigQuery. You can do this by setting up a BigQuery data transfer with the recommendations as the source. To do that, you'll need to have the Recommendations Exporter role assigned on your organization's IAM policy. This will give you access to the organization's recommendations across projects. Start in the Recommendation Hub, where you can find the Export button at the top of the page. The first step is to provide the destination project, where the recommendation data will be stored. The destination project can be any project that you have access to, but you'll need to have the following permissions for that project: BigQuery datasets create, BigQuery transfers get, BigQuery transfers update, resource manager projects update, service usage services enable, and service usage services get. In addition, the BigQuery API and BigQuery transfer API will need to be enabled for that project. The next step is to configure the transfer with a few details like name, schedule, and a target BigQuery dataset. When it comes to choosing a schedule, you'll have the option of daily, weekly, monthly, or your own custom schedule. You'll also be able to configure notifications via email if the transfer fails, or publish to a pub sub topic when a transfer completes. Once complete, you'll be able to see your new BigQuery data transfer details in the console, and it should begin populating data within about 2 days. Once the transfer has had a chance to run, you'll see those two tables we mentioned earlier in your selected BigQuery dataset: Recommendation Export and Insight Export. We'll include a link to the documentation where you can see the full table schema. Recommendations will also have a field for associated insights, so you can look up any insight details in the Insight Exports table. With recommendation data exported to BigQuery, you'll be able to write custom queries to analyze recommendations. From there, you can expand by exporting to Data Studio or Google Sheets, where you can further analyze for patterns and opportunities to optimize. You can also begin to automate by accessing that Recommender API, and follow that up by including recommendations into programmatic processes as part of your established CI/CD pipelines. Recommendations are available for all Google Cloud users. If your organization has a support package, you'll also have access to the full API and BigQuery export. We'll include a link in the description with more information. We'll also include some links in the description if you'd like to find even more information and guidance on using Active Assist at scale. And remember, the right solution depends on your organization and what makes sense for you. Don't be afraid to implement these over time instead of jumping immediately to the most complicated solution. Stay tuned for more videos, and thanks for watching.